Hi there, Bob Gager from Adobe here with another installment of Ask Bob, where I get to answer questions that you get to ask on our Facebook page. Today's question comes from Nikki, and it's all about watermarking your photos. I've actually received a number of questions about watermarking on various forums, whether it be the Facebook page, our Twitter feeds, or any of the user-to-user forums that are out there about Photoshop Elements. So let's do a quick tutorial. Like many things with Photoshop Elements, there's lots of ways to accomplish the task at hand, and watermarking is no exception. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways, and you can pick which one works the best for your situation. So let's start off with our welcome screen and selecting Photo Editor. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the editor here, and what I've actually got is a folder full of pictures. Let's see, Watermark Originals, here we go. So here is a folder on my hard drive full of a bunch of pictures that I want to watermark. So this first technique is going to be to show you how to watermark multiple photos at one time. So lots of different photos here. Back to my Elements editor, and under the File menu is something called Process Multiple Files. So I don't have to have these photos open in the editor. I just get my editor open and I go Process Multiple Files. That opens up a dialog that gives me a lot of different options. I'm only going to cover the important ones about watermarking here. So first is source, right? Where on your hard drive do these files exist? And just a note, everything I'm showing you here works exactly the same as it does on the Mac, which I'm using to demo, as it does on a Windows machine. So the source is where to find the files. Just hit Browse. You'll get a file dialog box, navigate around your hard drive, find your originals. In this case, I've got them all in this folder called Watermark Originals, and hit Choose. And then Destination. Where do you want Elements to put the watermarked files? If I want to put them back in the same folder as the source, right, where those images are now, I just check Same as Source. But I actually want to put them in a different folder, so I'll uncheck Same as Source, click Browse, navigate to a folder called Watermarked, and hit Choose, and so that's where it's going to put them. I can rename the files, I can change the size, I can change the format and quality and all that kind of good stuff. I can even have Process Multiple Files do automatic fixing for me. But I'm going to skip all of that because all I want to do is add a label, in this case a watermark. I have an ability to type in some custom text. You can put anything you want in here. So I'm just going to put the copyright symbol and the year that I took these photos and my name. Pretty typical thing that folks want to do as a watermark, which is add the copyright tag. I can specify where on my photos to put this copyright tag, whether it be centered smack dab in the middle of the photo or on the bottom left or on the bottom right. Pick a font, pick a size, pick an opacity. Opacity is sort of how transparent the watermark is. We default to 50% opacity, which is probably a good place to try for your first time here. And if you find you want it less opaque or more opaque, you can change this number on a second try. And then color. We default to black. I'm actually going to change it to white because most of my images are pretty dark with black backgrounds. So white is a more appropriate color for my watermark. And just hit OK. And then Elements will go ahead and process all those files for me, everything that's in that folder, add the watermark, and save a new copy into my destination folder. Alright, so now Photoshop Elements is done processing all those images. I'm going to switch back to my folder. Again, here are the originals. Let's navigate back up and then over to that watermarked version. And here are newly generated copies of all of those pictures that were in that folder with a watermark added. So I'll just select them all and do a quick view. Let me make this a little smaller inside the video capture window so you can see what's going on. All right, so here's that watermark. It's white, 50% opaque in the bottom right corner. As you can see, it's done it to all of the photos, whether they be black and white, whether they be color. no matter what the aspect ratio or size of them is, it's automatically gone and added the watermark as I specified. So as simple as that, I can add a watermark to a whole bunch of photos at one time. But I am just limited to text. And I'm limited to a couple places, right? Bottom right, bottom left, or center. I might want to have a little more flexibility with my watermarks. So that's where I would use the Photoshop Elements editor to actually do some watermarking in a more manual way. So let's switch back to my originals. Let's pick a shot. I don't know, let's maybe use this one here. I can just drag and drop that onto my editor, and here we go. I can hide my photo bin, so I've got a little more room for my photo, and we're going to go do some watermarking on this photo. So one of the techniques that you would really want to spend some time to learn is the concept of layers. As I've mentioned in other tutorials, layers really unlock the power of Photoshop Elements. This tutorial is not on layers, but you'll see me use some layers techniques. So if you're not already familiar with layers, hopefully you can pick something up along the way. But be sure to go do a Google search on Photoshop Elements 11 layers, and there's some really great tutorials out there that will walk you through the whole concept of layers. So the first thing that we want to do is add a new text layer. And adding a text layer is as simple as clicking on my text tool and then coming up here on my picture where I might want some text and just a quick click. This is actually, my font is set really big, so I'm going to open up my tool options and I'm going to change my font size to something a little more reasonable. 60 is even still a little big. Maybe let's do 30. You can see sort of the size of this vertical flashing line is how big my text is going to be. So maybe let's even go a little bit lower, maybe 18. So that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and pick a font color. Instead of black, I'm going to pick white because white's pretty good for a watermark text. And then just start typing. I'll use the same text that we put in automatically just so you can see how it works. So copyright symbol, year, 2012, and my name. And go ahead and click the green check mark to accept it. And then I can just drag it around anywhere on my photo. If I want it in the sky, if I want it down in the bottom right, or smack dab in the middle, or any kind of wacky place, I can drop it wherever I want. And so now I've got some text that I can move around, but I want to watermark it, right? If I put it over top of my image, the whole idea behind watermarking is to be able to see your image through your watermark. So you can see as I zoom in a little bit, this watermark is not transparent at all. And the way I make it transparent is real simple. I just select that text layer that we just created and change the opacity. So I can click on this little pull down, grab the slider, tune it down a little bit, change the opacity, and there you go. I've now got a semi-transparent watermark on top of my image. Another sort of shortcut for changing opacity, instead of clicking this little arrow and sliding the slider that shows, if I just click on the word opacity and drag right or left, the exact same thing happens. So I can very quickly get this adjusted exactly as I want. Let's double click on the hand so things fit again. Grab my move tool and I can still move it anywhere on the image that I want. And that's really the beauty of layers, right? I haven't changed the pixels of my initial image. I've just added a text layer on top of that and set its opacity to something less than 100%, so the image below will actually show through. Now if I want this to be a little fancier, I can do something like switch over to effects, and maybe I want to do something like add a bit of an outer glow, and just drag and drop that onto my text layer, and I've got an outer glow automatically applied for me around my watermark. If I want to adjust that, I'll switch back to my layers panel, and this text layer now has this little FX, meaning that there are some effects applied. And if I want to edit those effects, I can just double click the FX, the style settings dialog comes up, and I can fine-tune things. So this is an outer glow. You may remember that we just dragged on. I can change its size, so if I run it kind of tight, I can pull it in a little bit. That's maybe a different look. And then I might also want to add a stroke. So I'm just going to expand the stroke section, check on stroke, and it's added this black stroke around the edge. I'm going to go down to just a 1 pixel stroke and turn the opacity of that stroke down a little bit to make it kind of not so strong, and hit OK. So as simple as that, I've now got a watermark. Let me zoom in, and you can actually see what this is looking like at full scale. And even after making all those changes, I can move it anywhere on my image. So double click the hand. Even if I wanted to resize it to be over all of my image, I just select that layer, drag these edges up, and there you go. Click the green mark to select it. Back into full size so you can see what this is looking like. So as simple as that, I have created a watermark just using a text layer. Another technique that you might want to use is if instead of just using a text watermark, you want to use something like your company logo, you can do that too. So I'm going to do a file, open, and here's my browser. I'm going to go back up to this folder here, and I happen to have a image here. This is something that I created in Photoshop Elements. It's not really the Adobe logo, it's just a copyright symbol, but you can see it's could potentially be your company logo. So if I wanted to use that as a watermark, pretty simple. I just have my image here. I can do it in a number of ways. What I typically would like to do is just go to the File menu and select this Place option. And what Place does is let me browse my file system for any image file, select that, and it will go ahead and place that and size it appropriate for my image. If I grab one of the handles here on the corner, I can shrink it down to any size I want. I can move it around anywhere I want, get it exactly as I want it, and maybe up in the top right corner, and just hit the green check mark to actually go place that file. And much like we did with our text layer, we don't want our opacity 100%. We want to tone it down a little bit. We can select this layer and turn our opacity down a little bit. Get that watermark looking exactly as we want it. So if we really wanted to protect this image, we might put it right there in the center. Oops, I didn't want to stretch it that way. I want to stretch it equally. Put it right there in the center. Hit the green check mark, and now this image is watermark protected with what could potentially be my company logo. So those are 3 techniques so far, but there's actually one more that we might want to do. And that's actually creating a brush. So I could use a brush to place or stamp a watermark onto my image. And using a brush is pretty simple. I just need to go create a new image. So let's do File, New, blank file. We can make it pretty big. Don't even need to give it a title or anything. Just go ahead and click OK. And then I can do anything I want. I can put a picture in here. I can draw something. I can add some text. I'm just going to be really sloppy here so you kind of get the idea. But I will paint some black, I don't know, some black text. Who knows what we want our watermark to look like. Let's make it look kind of like that with some emptiness in the middle. Actually, let's use our eraser. Not the greatest piece of artwork here, but something to just kind of illustrate the idea. So now I've got an image in Photoshop Elements. What I want to do is make a brush out of that. So under Edit is a choice called Define Brush. So I just select Define Brush. I get a dialog box that gives me an opportunity to name my brush. I'm just going to call it Sloppy because I didn't take the time to do anything other than Sloppy, and hit OK. Now I can switch back to my other file. Let's move some of this stuff out of the way. Right, we've got that one, we've got that one. And now what I want to do is actually create a new layer, because I don't want to stamp the watermark onto my original image. I actually just want to do it on a floating layer up above that. I select my brush tool, and in the brush pull down right here, I can scroll down all the way to the bottom. Oh, that probably didn't show. Sorry, that's off the video capture, but all the way at the bottom is the brush that we just created. And let me make it a little smaller so you can see here's that kind of wacky shape. Hopefully you can see that outline. I can pick a color. So instead of black, maybe let's make a red watermark. I'm going to make it a little smaller and just put it where I want it and single click, and I've essentially stamped on that image onto my file as a watermark. And just like before, it's completely opaque because this layer is set to 100%. If I turn the opacity down, that will become a see-through layer, and you can see some of the background showing through my watermark that's on top of that. I, of course, can scale it just like before. I can do things like add an effect, such as maybe that same glow. Who knows what this is going to look like. Oops, I need to accept it. Drag and drop a glow, and you can see there we go, back to my layers. Double click effects and maybe add a stroke, and all the way down maybe a 1 pixel stroke. There we go. And okay, resize accordingly exactly as I want. I can stretch it, I can twist it, I can rotate it, all that kind of stuff. Accept it, set its opacity back down to anything I want, and now I've got a watermark based on an image. It's a little bit ugly, but I'm sure your artistic talents are much better than mine. So there are 4 different ways to add a watermark to your photo. The automated way, using, again, File, Process Multiple Images. I can make a watermark using just a text layer and set the opacity to about 50%. I can create a watermark using an image file that I already have created, and again set the opacity down to something other than 100% so the background shows through. And I can also create my own custom brush and use that as a watermark stamp. And again, the advantage of the custom brush, if I wanted to do this to a different image as well, that brush is always available to me, and I can just stamp to my heart's content. So there you go. Hope that helps, Nikki, and everyone else who's interested in creating watermarks on top of your images. Take care. So there you go. Hope that helps, Nikki, and everyone else who's interested in creating watermarks on top of your images. Take care.